Welcome, welcome, welcome to Church in the Wild. Thank you for being here today. I am so excited to be doing Monsters. I'm pumped to begin this series again. This is a fun series. We have a good time with it. And man, I am so excited. If you have a Bible, we're going to kind of jump into this. You can turn to James chapter 1. While you turn there, we have baptisms today at Red Banks. Yeah, we have 3 baptisms, so really excited about this. If you need to know how to get to Red Banks Marina, we have maps for you at the Connect Center. This is just such a fun time. It's in a river, it's outside, it's beautiful. It's just such a blessing, and I love being able to be a part of that. We're going to leave 20 minutes after the service. We're going to give time to do some next steps, do those things, base camp, and begin a little bit of the tear down, and then we'll go meet at Red Banks, and we will baptize some people. So hats are for sale. You can see Cam if you'd like to buy a hat. And then we are talking today about how to deal with a headless horseman. All right, so this series, Monsters, is just a look at how to deal with really difficult people. And the truth is, we all in our lives have difficult people to deal with. We all know that there are people who are just harder to deal with than others. Now, a couple things right off the bat. There is no one who is perfect. Right? So when we start talking about people who get angry, I can tell you for a fact, I moved this weekend with my wife. All right? And nothing will test your marriage quite like moving. Right? I mean, it just is what it is. At one point, late at night, one of the two of us in our marriage, whose name shall remain anonymous, but it's not Jason, left every door in the Jeep wide open, which drained the battery down. While we were trying to jumpstart the battery, that same person who shall remain anonymous sneezed and lost the house key while sneezing. So on a Friday night at midnight, I may have turned into a headless horseman for several moments. Okay? So there's no one perfect. So as we go through this series, please keep in mind, we all know someone who's difficult to deal with, and we are all kind of difficult to deal with at certain times. If we're just completely honest, all of us have some part of everybody that we're going to discuss in us throughout this. So we're going to look at a couple of different monsters. We're going to look at the headless horseman this week. This is a person who loses their head, gets angry. Next week we'll look at the Phantom of the Opera. This is a person who wears a mask. This turns him into a hypocrite. Then we'll look at skeletons. These are people who are stuck in the past. And then we will close it up with Stranger Things, Demogorgon. And this is anybody who hates anything or anyone who is good. All right? So, a couple things right off the bat. If movies with monsters in them teach us anything, they teach us that, number one, you cannot outrun a monster. You ever notice this in a movie? Every movie from the 80s begins with a group of athletes driving around in a truck to go to a camp, and somehow a guy who can barely move like this can outrun every athlete in the movie. Without fail, the star track athlete falls and trips, but the guy who can't even stumble or mumble his own name can leap over the log that the star athlete tripped over, and then the athlete does what happens in every movie. They begin to crawl backwards on their hands, and I'm like, bro, run! You're an athlete, run! Right? You cannot run monsters. Truth is, movies can teach us something about life, and that is you can't outrun difficult people. No matter how many jobs you quit and begin at a new career, there will be a difficult person waiting for you there. When I was in school, I had a teacher that was just difficult to get along with. And when I graduated, I said, see ya, don't have to deal with a difficult teacher ever again. Got to college, and guess what? Difficult teacher. Got done with college and thought, oh, I got a job now, I'm good. Guess what? Difficult coworker. The truth is, just like in these movies where these star athletes try to outrun someone who can't even barely drag his foot, you can't outrun a monster. And in your life and in your relationships, no matter how many best friends you have, no matter how many churches you go to, no matter how many small groups you attend, No matter how many friends you get rid of along the way, there will always be someone difficult no matter where you land. I've been to almost every state in America, and you know what? The people in the drive-thru line that are difficult to deal with here are also difficult to deal with out west. It's just the truth. You can't outrun them. Number two, you can't hide from a monster. You ever notice how in the same movie, the kids always end up oddly picking the creepiest place to go to? And they run into a school that's dark, like, just run to the police station. It's right there beside the school. And they go to hide, and there's 870 lockers, and somehow the villain knows which locker they hid in. Which brings two things to mind. Number one, I'm much too large to fit in any of these lockers. Every time I see it, I'm like, that locker, that's not how my lockers fit, right? I can't even get in. Like, I would be caught immediately, stuck in the door. But also, you just can't hide from them. The kids hide underneath the school tables, and the monster knows exactly which table they're hiding under. Truth is, in today's world, you can't hide from difficult people. I did a test of this. This week I got on Facebook, and the first 17 posts that I saw on Facebook were all people who were mad at one political party or mad at another political party or just mad at everyone because, let's be honest, the debate was a mess. Right? So just wham, there it was. So for 17 things, and I thought, you can't even hide on social media anymore. There's nowhere you can go to hide from difficult people. So then we have to figure out how to deal with them. How do you work with someone who's difficult? How do you live with someone who's difficult? How do you just go to church with someone who's difficult? How do you deal with people who are difficult? So let's talk about the Headless Horseman. The Headless Horseman is a story by Washington Irving. It was turned into a cartoon in 1949 with other spin-offs and similar movies that followed. It is a superstitious schoolteacher named Ichabod Crane, and he enters the valley called Sleepy Hollow to teach. He soon falls in love with a lady named Katrina, who is also loved by Brom Van Brunt, it's a great name, who is a local boy who loves to have fun, play pranks, and he loves Katrina. The teacher soon falls in love. He decides to propose, but first there's a big fall harvest celebration where everyone gathers to tell stories, eat, and dance. Ichabod is denied by Katrina, and after hearing scary stories about a headless horseman riding around, he sets out for home on his trusty horse Gunpowder. His superstition and his imagination soon have him afraid of every noise he hears, but soon an actual headless horseman chases him. He escapes all the way to the bridge, which is where he's been told the power of the horseman ends, and just as he turns, the monster throws a pumpkin head that's on fire at him. He flees the town, never to return, and Van Brunt, who is a skilled horseman, seems to smile every time the story is told, and he promptly proposes to Katrina. And this is the story of the Headless Horseman. So what on earth does that have to do with us? The truth is, there are people in your life who will get angry, and they will lose their head, and they will say things that are hurtful, and they will do things that might bother you, or you might be the one who says the hurtful things in your relationship. So how do we deal with them? If you look, first of all, at James chapter 1, verses 19 and 20, it says this: "Know this, my beloved brothers, let every person be quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to anger, for the anger of man does not produce the righteousness of God." In Psalm chapter 37, verses 8 and 9. "Refrain from anger, forsake wrath. Fret not yourself, for it tends only to evil. For the evildoers shall be cut off, but those who wait for the Lord shall inherit the land." And then Proverbs 29, verse 11, "A fool gives full vent to his spirit, but a wise man quietly holds it back." So the Bible is very clear. We are not supposed to be people who get angry. We're not supposed to consistently and constantly be angry at each other. Now, the Bible does tell the story about Jesus getting angry, and it also says, "Be angry and sin not, let not the sun go down upon your wrath." That is true. The idea of that verse is that there are people who get angry and hold it in and never vent it out, and they hold on to things forever, and they begin to resent each other and get more and more and more and more and more angry as time goes by. So, how do we deal with someone who in our life is just an angry person? They lose their head. Well, number one, If you don't have to, don't. If you don't have to deal with them, don't. Now, that is not an excuse for you to just get rid of your wife because, well, I don't want to deal with it, right? That's not what I'm saying. Please hear me. I'm going to be on YouTube in a couple weeks. He said it's okay. That's not the truth. The truth is, if you're dating someone who has a temper problem now, get rid of them now while you're dating them and don't marry him. Because it is one of the biggest lies told. Well, I just only get angry because we're not married yet. That's just not true. If someone has an anger problem now, they will have an anger problem after you get married. That's just the truth, because you know what? If someone has an anger problem, they have an anger problem. So if you're friends with someone and you're thinking, you know, I really want to date this girl, but she keeps yelling at me every day, don't date her. Just don't. Say, hey, we're great friends. Deuces, right? If you're married and you're thinking about, like, oh, I'm thinking about marrying this girl, but she's constantly mad every day, pick someone else. It's a big world. All right? If you're friends with someone and you know they have a temper problem, don't jump into owning a business with them. If you don't have to deal with them, don't. But what if you have to deal with them? Because what if nobody told you that and you're already married or already working with them? Well, what do? Well, you can then deal with them with prayer. With prayer. 1 Timothy chapter 2, verse 8. I desire then that in every place men should pray, lifting holy hands, without anger or quarreling. How about instead of getting angry at each other, we pray with each other? You know, it's really hard to be mad at someone when you're holding hands, kneeling down on the ground and praying with that person. It's a lot harder to be mad at someone when you are praying with them. Now, don't get into the temptation right here. Okay, let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, forgive my wife for ordering this drink that no one can decipher, and you just launch into everything wrong with her. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is when you pray with them, pray that God would bless them. Pray that God would be with them. Don't pray, God, forgive my husband for being angry at me because I showed up. Like, that's not it. Pray that God would be with them, that He would bless them, that He would help your marriage to reflect Him, and begin to pray with them. It is amazing how much more difficult it is to be mad at someone when you're side by side on your knees praying that God will find a way to help you be a blessing to somebody else. Pray with them. Deal with them with prayer. Your prayer may or may not change them, but it will change you. Here's the temptation. Well, if I pray, they'll change, and that might not ever happen. You might pray with someone for 20 years, and they might still have a temper problem after 21 years. But do you know who will change? You. You will change. And so, if you pray with and for whoever this person is, they might change and they might not, but you definitely will. You might learn more patience. You might be reminded of the time that God forgave you for what you did, and you will begin to change. Then deal with them with counseling. With counseling. Proverbs chapter 11, verse 14. Where there is no guidance, people fail, but in an abundance of counselor there is safety. This is why this is so important. Because you might think they have a temper problem, and they might think you just are too emotional or too sensitive. And so you need another party, you need a third anonymous party who might be able to see both of you for truly what the problem really is. So the temptation is, I'll get a counselor to be my best friend and I'll tell everything wrong with my husband. That's not what I'm talking about. Okay, I know exactly who I'll talk to for sure. He will definitely agree with me, and I'll point out to my wife, yeah, you did this. That's not it. I also don't recommend that your counselor is your boss. Yeah, you know, so-and-so, they yell at me every time at every meeting. What do you think we should do about it? That's not the clue either. It's important that you find an anonymous third party, someone who can see things from a distance. Why? Because we can see things with a better perspective when we're backing up. Ever notice how if you're further back from something, you seem to be able to see it a little bit better? My daughter watches her iPad right like this right now. And she gets so frustrated because she can't figure out where the back button is. And I can see it because I'm up here and I'm like, it's right there. Why? Because I'm a little bit removed from the situation. Sometimes you might need someone who's a little bit removed from the situation, not another coworker, who can help you understand why it is that coworker gets angry every time you're 30 minutes late. Sometimes you need counseling. Next, with patience. With patience. You're going to have to be patient with each other. Why? Because when emotions are high, wisdom is low. When emotions are high, wisdom is low. So if you want to deal with someone who has an anger problem, you're going to have to just resign yourself to the fact that you need to be patient. That means you might need to be patient with them, but it also means you might need to wait a little while before you decide to bring up that they have an anger problem, rather than bringing up that they have an anger problem when they have the anger problem. When you have a flat tire on the side of the road and your spouse is kicking your car, is not the time to remind your spouse, you know what, I think you have an anger problem. That's not the time. My dad would kick the side of our truck regularly. As a kid, I would watch just bang, he'd kick that thing, right? That was never the time for me to be like, Dad, you're awful angry right now. That's not the time. Have patience. Figure out a time, you know what, hey, I really want to address this. I really want to talk about this temper problem, this anger problem, but I'm not going to do it in the middle of the Lions, or the Wolverines, losing to the Buckeyes yet again. That's never the time. Third quarter, down by 30. You know what? I think you have a temper problem. That's not the time. I promise. Have some patience. Have some patience. When you say and how you say is just as important as what you say. Equally as important as what you say is when you say it and how you say it. Next, with forgiveness. With forgiveness. Deal with them with forgiveness. Look at Proverbs chapter 12, verse 16. The vexation of a fool is known at once, but the prudent ignores an insult. Proverbs 20, verse 3. It is an honor for a man to keep aloof from strife, but every fool will be quarreling. 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 9. Do not repay evil for evil, or reviling for reviling, but on the contrary, bless. For to this you were called, that you may obtain a blessing. Sometimes you're just going to have to decide to forgive. And this is not fun, and this is not what you want to hear, and I recognize that. But sometimes you're just going to have to say, you know what? This coworker is wrong, this person is wrong, this spouse is wrong, this in-law is wrong, this family member is wrong, this person at the church is wrong, and I'm just going to forgive them. Because that's what Christ did for me. You ever think about this? Like, we are so quick to not forgive each other. How dare you say this? But then we claim the name Christian at every opportunity. Christian literally just means forgiven. That's it. And we are so quick to point out that we are forgiven. And yet somehow it seems like Christians are the hardest ones to ever forgive anybody else. I think sometimes we just need to remember what we were forgiven for. And it'll be so much easier to forgive. Now this is the last one for this part. Deal with them with confidence. Deal with them with confidence. If you run, you are giving them what they want and what they do not need. If you think back to this story of the headless horseman, this guy, Von Bones, his name is, decides that he's afraid of Ichabod Crane because he thinks Ichabod Crane is going to steal his girlfriend, Katrina. So what does he do? He creates a character that loses his head. And there's so much wisdom in a children's tale if we just are willing to look at that. Because if you think about it, that coworker who always loses their mind on you is most likely just afraid of you. And so they lose their head to get you to run so that they don't have to deal with you. Because your ideas might be a little bit better than their idea, and so publicly they need to make it look like it was the worst idea ever. That in-law, that in-law who just loses their mind because you brought potato salad and not sweet potato salad, is probably a little afraid that you are now the favorite and they're not, or you might be stealing their boy. That's my son, not your husband. Like, that's literally like how it goes, and they get afraid, and so they lose their mind to get you to run from them. And so it's so important that you deal with them with confidence. That you stand up for yourself and do not spend the rest of your life running from people who get angry at you. You need to pray first. You need to get counseling. You need to be willing to forgive. And then you need to say, you know what, listen, I've been thinking about this for 3 weeks and I picked this time. This is a really good time for us to talk. I don't appreciate the way you talk to me in front of other people when you're upset. And you have to stand up for yourself. This guy in this Legend of Sleepy Hollow, he creates this character to get Ichabod to run away so he can marry the girl. You know, one time my wife and I were married and someone said something to her and they were very used to saying that to her in that type of an angry, very demonstrative way. They got really upset and I had to say to them, listen, she's my wife now and you will never do that to her ever again. You will never speak to my wife again or you will deal with me when we talk. And you know, they got really mad and they never spoke to her again like that. Sometimes you're going to have to speak up with confidence. And sometimes you're going to have to say, listen, I've been praying about this for weeks, and I've gotten counseling about this, and I really need you to stop demeaning me in front of everybody else, and I really need to discuss what you said about me when you were angry. Because here's what happens with the person who's a headless horseman. They lose their head. And they don't even remember what it is they said 2 weeks later. They will also say this, well, you should know that I love you. You should know that I didn't mean it. And that's how you know if you're a headless horseman. If you find yourself, listen, you know I don't mean that. You know I love you. You know I don't think that way. The problem is, no one knows what you think. They only know what you say. So if you just tell your spouse you should know that I love you, but you tell them regularly how mad you are at them because they're awful and 6 years ago you forgot my birthday, they will only know that you think bad about them. Because it's funny how we expect that people should know that we love them, but we don't expect that they should know what we think bad about them, so we feel free to tell them that. No one knows what you think, they only know what you say. So if you never say I love you, if you never say I'm sorry, if you never tell the good, they will never think that they are good. So what do you do then if you are this person? What if you're listening right now and you're like, oh, okay, maybe I should have yelled at my wife when she sneezed and lost the keys to our vehicle. Right? What do you do if that's you? Well, ask forgiveness. Ask forgiveness. Just say, I'm sorry, I lost my temper, and I need you to forgive me. It's not that hard. I have to do it every week. It's not that hard. Ask forgiveness. Ask forgiveness. Tell them you are sorry and you need them. I need you to forgive me. I did not mean, and I should not have said, and I need forgiveness. Next, ask for help. Ask for help. Galatians chapter 5, verses 22 and 23. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. And against such there is no law. ask for help. If you struggle with just losing your mind and saying things, beg the Holy Spirit to give you gentleness. Plead with God for it. Plead with God for it. Ask Him to give you what you need as much as you ask Him to give you the Buckeyes victories. Beg for it. Plead with God. God, I need gentleness. I need meekness. I need goodness. I need love. I need joy. Ask God for those things. There's this verse in the Bible that cracks me up because the Bible is talking about seeking wisdom, and it says if you ask, you receive, and everyone loves the verse about if you ask, you receive, but they often forget about the fact that it's talking about asking for wisdom. Right? This is the idea. Listen, if you ask for gentleness, God will give you gentleness. If you ask for peace, God will give you peace. If you ask for goodness, God will give you goodness. So beg Him for help. Exercise calm. If you struggle with this, exercise calm. Look at Psalm chapter 39, verse 1. I will guard my ways, that I may not sin with my tongue. Look at what he says next. I will guard my mouth with a muzzle, so long as the wicked are in my presence. You know what he's saying? As long as I am on this earth and not in heaven, I will literally put a muzzle to my mouth so that I do not run my tongue and offend my spouse. Guard and exercise calmness. Plead for it and exercise it. You know, you don't have to yell at the person for giving you the wrong drink. You don't have to. You don't have to scream at the person who brings you the wrong food. I was with someone one time and we went to eat and they asked for spaghetti and they asked for sauce and the meatballs on the side. And the person brought them spaghetti with sauce and meatballs on top. And they absolutely lost their mind on this person. And they began to call them names, began to talk about their mental capabilities, began to just belittle them. I don't want this. Take it back. Give it to me the way I order it. I pay for this food. We got done. You know what they then did? Hey, you should come to my church. And I'm like, I'm glad you don't go to my church because that person's never coming. David said in the book of Psalms, I'll guard my mouth with a muzzle. I will literally treat it as if I have this pit bull at my side and I have to put a muzzle on it to keep it from biting someone when we walk by. That's what I would do with my tongue and my mouth. And so this is you. Learn to exercise calm as much as you would exercise any muscle group that you're trying to grow at the gym. Exercise calm.